The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Listen in as your host, Kristie Colburn, brings together a perfectly picked panel of guests to discuss hot topics and events within the metaphysical and paranormal field. But don't worry, should the discussions get too heated, our studio's witch will sound her cackle to simmer the cauldron back down. Listen for new episodes of Cauldron Talk with Kristie Colburn every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. only on Paranormal Buzz Radio. This is Season 1, Episode 6. Today we are talking about psychics, mediums, and empaths. I'm your host, Kristie Colburn, and today we are welcoming to our circle Alonnie Milligan and Kristie London. Welcome to my circle, ladies. How are we all doing today?
Doing very well. How about you?
It's so nice to be back.
Thank you for having me.
Tomorrow will be full moon, so this is a good timing.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the full moon.
I have felt the last few, unfortunately.
It can certainly raise havoc, that's for sure.
Oh, yes.
So, before we begin, would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello, and thank you again for having me. This is really exciting. I am a psychic medium. I am a Reiki master. I am an empath. I'm also a paranormal investigator. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm also a mom, wife, busy all the time. I have, an office in Tonawanda where I do most of my business. And I have found definitely doing this work that, healing happens in all different ways. And every time I work with somebody, I just learn so much about myself and all the different things that can happen and that all the different ways we can offer healing and closure. And so it's always a learning experience working and doing what I do. It's truly a gift in that way, the way I see it. I do a lot of the fairs, and I have started to really, over the last few years, get into the investigative part of the investigative side of things. So it's been quite the wild ride lately, and I've met a lot of new and exciting people and had a lot of different opportunities and doors open, which has been amazing because it just means I can reach more people and help more people. So it's been wonderful.
So I'm a psychic medium. 50 plus years doing this and professional since 92. I like to chase after things that go bump in the night. That seems like a normal world for me. And a growing, ever growing population of people that I see every year. And I enjoy the large events and I enjoy the small events and I enjoy seeing so many people of this like-mindedness that once you talk with them and dispel some of their fears, they can relax and say, I think I do this too, or I have experienced this, or what does that mean? And that gives me a lot of joy to be able to help someone or assist them on their journey and their process, figuring out who they are, spiritually, spectrally, and never a dull moment. Never a dull moment.
That's true. All right, so my questions for you today are, what is a medium, what is a psychic, and what is an empath?
So the way I always explain it is like this. So a psychic or an intuitive to me are pretty much the same thing. Your intuition, your gut, your instinct, your red flag system, your mandar, your radar, that feeling in the pit of your stomach. I'm sorry, I apologize for my voice tonight. That tells you something is absolutely right or absolutely wrong, even if your mind cannot make sense of it. You're reading energy around you. your guides are stepping in, your spirit guides are stepping in, and they're letting you know, they're giving you information, they're helping you out. They're the little voice in your head, your intuition, your psychic ability, your psyche, and you're picking up on either the things, the people, the residual energy around you, and it stops or ends when you leave that environment, but it happens all day long, every day of our lives, because we're always going from environment to environment to environment, car to home, home to store, store to car, and so on. To be a medium, it means you can connect with the energy of those who have passed away, and they with you. So whether it's people or animals, or I always say, I've yet to channel a plant, but you never know. But anything that's passed from this world on to the next, you're able to make that connection. You can be a psychic and not a medium. When you're a medium, it encompasses everything plus some. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just levels of understanding, levels of being in tune with yourself. And you can usually learn to go to that deeper place if you are already in tune with, your psyche or your intuitive ability, which is pretty cool. It's actually very special. So to be a medium, it can happen in all different ways, the kinds of connections you make with spirit and vice versa, because spirit is not all equal in my experience. We're only as strong as our souls are ascended. And so the connections are going to be different because it's an exchange of energy. So the and then some part for me would be the fact that I'm an empath. So it derives from the word empathy. It means I can feel mentally, physically, and emotionally either what spirit wants me to feel or what I pick up on from people around me. So, for instance, if somebody's uncle comes forward and they want me to know they had a heart attack, I can actually get a pain in my chest and down my arm usually. So it's really just, they're looking for validation. It's just another way for them to talk to me. So once it's validated, the pain goes away. Mentally and emotionally, I may treat somebody the way that their loved one treated them. I may use vocabulary that they did and so on. My emotions may go from 0 to 60 and back again out of nowhere. So it can be pretty interesting and pretty intense. And the same is true for picking up on people who are around me as well. Their thoughts and feelings and emotions and so on. So it can be a pretty interesting and wild ride. But I'm also actually able to channel people as well. Truly channel, I guess, in my opinion too, everyone, as mediums, we channel all the time, but we can also step back and allow spirit to truly channel through us, kind of like you see in the movies. So I can actually do that as well. But that's few and far between, and spirit really has to earn that place. It is very draining on me. It is very draining for them. And I have to know that their intentions are pure and coming from the right place in order to do that for someone. Because when it does happen, it can bring somebody some great closure and some real peace, but it can also be very hurtful if it's done improperly too. So that's pretty much what those gifts mean to me and how I usually explain them for myself.
For me, here's how I would describe the psychic part and how I explain it to other people, that we all have that piece in us, that we filter our psychic awareness differently. Maybe cars make sense to you when you're a great mechanic, or you're a rocket scientist because math makes super sense to you, or an artist and or a musician. You talk to dead people. You sense things. We all filter in a different way. So we all carry a little bit of something. For me, my psychic ability comes from that little extra dimmer switch gets turned up, and then my senses are a little more heightened. My awareness is a little more attuned, and I'll perceive a little higher to the surface. So that energy play is easier to detect or see or understand. I look at some of the people that I've met that I don't understand what they're doing. It doesn't make any sense in my brain. And that they don't understand what I do. It doesn't make sense in their brain. But we can honor that part, that psychic awareness in both of us, because we can see it at work. And for us, as little mortal beings that we are, we have little bouts of greatness where things just align and we just get it. And so one of the things that I like to do with my clients I do a little psychic, I do a little medium. And I encourage them to be a part of the session in the way that they can start to honor that part in themselves and bring that awareness up. We all have a little something. The medium part I've been doing for so long, I thought everybody did as a kid. It just seemed like the normal place and understanding and seeing things, energies, people who have passed, animals, etc., and thinking it was just normal. And so knowing that other people didn't as easily as I did or at all was confounding to me. Being able to discern between what is imaginary in the head and what's standing in front of me. For most people, it's a skill that you learn, and then once you embrace it, you can start to differentiate between the two and to see how that manifests, because we're influenced by so much throughout the day, to see if something is entering into a session and know that that's an influence from an outside part or it's not, and it's what you're seeing and perceiving for the person. And I tell all my clients when I see them, look, I protect myself. When we're done, I'm not going to remember you. I'm not going to remember the reading. If I run into you in the store, I'm going to be confused. Hi, how are you doing? And I have people for decades that have been clients that this still sometimes is like that. And sometimes they can sit down and they will Spirit will bring back everything. Oh, how about that business, right? And so that's always very interesting part of being a medium, because using that dimmer switch to turn it up and down takes some practice. I'm not always on at work. It's not appropriate during my day job. And there are times that you're out in public and something's going on and you want to say something and you got to feel the room. You got to look at the people you're with and see what's going on. So there's all kinds of learning curves with this kind of stuff. The empathic part, I think, goes hand in hand with all of that stuff, because you're trusting that gut part of you. You're perceiving and being that sponge and sucking up that energy and knowing how to displace that or what to do with some of that, and allowing ourselves that opportunity to feel what someone else has gone through. That psychic, physical, medium, empathic part where you felt someone had a heart attack. What it felt like when they died in that car accident. When I've had, just way too many kids who have overdosed this year. And the taste in my mouth, and when I describe it, it's what, some of these harder drugs are going to taste like in your body or mouth or what's going on. And so some of this stuff can be overwhelming for us. So having that really solid foundation of grounding and what you're going to do with this stuff when you're done is pretty important, vital for anybody that does this kind of energy work. So having that thing that we know that we can go to and say, okay, here's where I shut it down. Here's where I turn it off. Here's where I let them ride me and come in and speak through me. Here's where I have I'll speak for you. And being comfortable in that realm takes practice, and it takes falling down a few times to learn what you do want and what you don't want with your work, with your abilities, with what you're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely taken me a lifetime so far of learning and relearning even. Because I remember, as a child, I was much, much more open and much more, everything was easier, just came easier for me. And honestly, I feel like the time that I kind of started becoming an adult and ego started stepping in a little bit more, I started overthinking, and that's when things kind of went away a little bit. Quotations around went away. Do you guys have anything similar to that?
Oh, yes. Excuse me. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, when you're a child and you don't have a care in the world, it's the best feeling, but it's also the scariest, especially if you don't have resources or help, because as you're going through that, it's very difficult, especially being an empath, as we can all relate to, because I know I did not have any resources or anybody to turn to. Wasn't until I came out publicly about 5 years ago that people in my family then stepped forward and said, hey, just so you know, and I looked at them and said, where have you been for 30 years? I kind of needed this, but, everyone is at their in different places in their journey and in their path and, levels of being comfortable. And, but you're right, I think a lot of it has to do too with the fact that you have to learn to adjust and adapt to it as you get older, especially if you don't have anybody else to talk to about it or any other friends that you can relate to. And so you start to have to manipulate and, figure things out. And you're right, life gets in the way. And then all of these other, opinions and thoughts and feelings and just your own fears get in the way and kind of shut that down. And then the ego especially gets in the way. And, you have to kind of go into that mode of, I've got this under control, because you don't really have a choice but to do that or be that way. Otherwise it will take over. And, so then that makes it worse. And, but yeah, especially feeling things and thinking of things, and having things happen that you can't explain, or feelings, that overwhelm you and there's just no words to explain it or describe it. And Alonnie, I agree with you 100% that the empathy, the empath is definitely the core of my gifts as well. It's what drives everything. And just like you, I go into what I call my zone. I love the dimmer switch. I think that's a great way to describe it. And, it's one of those things where, I tell people, please don't take it personally. I'm getting a little older. My memory's not like it used to be. But, if I don't recognize you or remember you, and multiple people, or steady clients, I should say, that I've seen multiple times, I won't remember a reading. I won't remember, and people will say, oh, you see so many people. It's not that. It is because I go into my zone and that's it. And you want me to be able to do that, because every reading and every interaction, you want to be as authentic as possible. And just like Alonnie had mentioned too, Spirit will bring things back, or my spirit guides, when I'm working with them, will bring information back, or things will at least feel familiar enough that you can say, oh yes, I do remember this, and now we're going to build on it, or now we're going to bring this back for whatever reason, we're going to work with it. So it's very interesting. It's almost like, ego gets in the way, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's almost like a defense mechanism, because you have to still be able to live and survive, especially if it's something that you don't have help with. So it can be kind of like a double-edged sword, but you learn to manipulate it, and you learn to adjust and make it your own.
Well said. Well said. As we grow as people, we have those ebbs and flows of life, where something we're really good at, and other times we're not so good at it. And the same thing with this kind of stuff. We're going to have ebbs and flows where we're on top of our game, and other times we are not anywhere in the bubble. Yeah. And that's okay, because there's something else we need to be working on or experiencing or learning from. We're not on 100% of the time, gratefully, thankfully. And there are times when, life can get in the way and you need to shut down for a while. And then you turn back up when it's time. And what you believed at 20, you're not going to believe at 25 and 30 and 35 and 40 and 50 and et cetera. And your work is going to reflect that the same way. Because as you become more comfortable and aware of how you are feeling and working with this stuff, some of those things that you perceived or worked with when you were, a kid doesn't necessarily work now, or as a young adult, it's necessarily now. And I know for myself, this evolution of the soul, so to speak, and of using those enhanced abilities, I guess I can call it, changes. And it's just like when if you've used a certain deck for years and years and years, and you pick it up one day and it goes, oh, I'm not speaking to you at all. It's time to find a new deck. It's the same thing that's going to happen with us, where we will find, I've done this way, and today it's not working that way. It's time to go on to something else. You've evolved. And to honor that part in us allows us to grow and allows us to go on to that next level of what we're supposed to be doing on the planet. Being mindful that ego is a big, giant, grizzly eating machine that will keep us in check. And to have someone that you can rely on, that you can go to for guidance, or as someone who can read for you or do something for you, that can call you on your stuff is really important. Because we are mortals, we are humans, and we can get carried away in anything. I'm the best chocolate chip maker in the world, right? Not me. I can't bake. If he gave me the box and I opened up the cookies and put them on a tray, that'd be my baking, right? But, having somebody that can help keep you in check and say, you're a little off, you're a little contrived, you're doing really great, just someone that can look at you and say, I support you and I love you, because our family cannot always do that for us. They don't necessarily understand what we're doing. I know from my family of origin, I'm the only person that does any kind of energy play, and they look at me like I have 6 heads. And for a long time, that bothered me. And now, luckily, gratefully, I'm at that place where I can say, well, you just don't get it. So, okay. And I go on and do what I need to do. And so that's the lovely part about this field, so to speak. You can't shake a cat without hitting a psychic, right? And there's 11 million ways of doing this stuff. And not all of them are wrong and not all of them are right. So having your toe in there knows that someday it's going to be a toe in there and other times it's going to be a foot in there. But you're in there and you're doing it. And that's the part that takes this field to a level of legitimacy and takes us the opportunity to raise our consciousness and our energy level.
I love that. Can I just interject before you ask the next question? So
Yes.
that's a very good, I love that, Alonnie, because you're right. That balance of ego versus confidence, you have to have enough confidence in yourself and what you can do, but you also have to be humble enough to know your limits. Mm-hmm. And, I can't tell you how many times I've had, I don't like using the word student, but mentee, whatever you want to call them, will come in one day and be like, oh my gosh, that's it. I knew it. I'm not gifted. I'm definitely not gifted. Nothing's happened in the last 2 weeks. And I just look and I laugh because I remember that feeling.
Yeah,
and I still have those feelings. It still happens for me. Like, I can go somewhere with somebody else and they're like, oh my gosh, there's somebody sitting in that chair. And, oh, do you feel the energy over here? And I'm walking around like, la, la, la. Nope. I feel nothing. And it makes you question yourself. But then you have to remember, it doesn't always have to be turned on. Like you said, that dimmer switch does not always have to be on full blast. And it's not supposed to be. We all have to learn ourselves and who we are. And you're right. We are still human beings. We have responsibility. We have life we have to live. We have, things to take care of and people who rely on us for things in this world. And, you have to be able to focus on that too. But there's also that then balancing that responsibility that comes along with having these gifts and knowing that, we have to do what we have to do sometimes, even if we don't want to do it,
mm-hmm.
And being in that place where you're going, oh, please don't put me in this position, but that's our job. That's what we're here for. And you just pray, and that's where your faith comes in. And you just pray that no one's going to freak out on you and no one's going to, my kids and my family have so many times been like, oh shoot, your breathing's changing and we're in the middle of a restaurant or something. Oh crap, mom's getting a message.
Right.
It's like, sorry, and here I am walking up to somebody saying, hi, I'm Kristie London, and I hope you don't mind, and if you don't want a message, you can certainly tell me to go away. I'm not trying to harass you or bother you, but when you go through, and before most people are very, very receptive, even if they're unsure. But you're right, because this is a forever changing, forever evolving, even for me, because people I work with and the people who mentor with me, they look and go, oh, I want to be like you. I'm like, don't do that to me. Number one, I don't see myself that way. I learn from you as much as you learn from me, hopefully. And what I'm doing is, because I've already just gotten to a point that you're working to get to, I'm helping you to get to that point so we can work together at some point. I always tell them I You're going to start here with me and you're going to learn, and one day I want to be able to know that I can turn to you as a resource if I need it. Because that's what we all need from each other, because we all have different ways of doing things and we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, but it's ever evolving and ever changing. So they look at me as if I know it all or I've got it all together, and it's like, oh, you are so way off base on that one, because I don't. Am I confident? Yes. Do I have a foundation? Yes. But are there times where I walk into a situation and I have to just rely on faith or my skill or my gifts to say, ooh, I have to just handle this on the fly? Absolutely. But then that's where the balance comes in. And, they don't realize that until they're in those situations, but we have to be humble to dim that switch and raise it when we need it. But we also have to know that when we are called, we have to jump. If they tell us to jump, spirit, whoever, our guides, and we have to say how high, because that's what we're here for. It's our job to help take care of people, and that's the most important thing. But the other side of that we don't really hear a lot about is that, we're not only just here to help take care of the people who are left behind, we're also here to help take care of spirit. What spirit needs to get done, they need us to help do sometimes, and we don't really hear a lot about that. So it's kind of neat, and it gives more depth and purpose to what we do.
And another piece of that is, being a healthy skeptic is important in this field.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to say, that's not vibing with me, and not in the ego sense, meaning I'm better than you, so you don't know what you're talking about. It's that piece of you that just goes, oh no, something's not right here. No. and that's a big piece of this too, because, people will say to me the same thing, oh, I want to be like you. No, you don't. You really don't. You really don't. You don't want to see somebody who's been in a car accident and see their bloody face in front of you and think it's going to be wonderful. It's not.
Yeah.
Right? And being that skeptic, because if you're doing this in the right vein, you're going to get clients who have been to people who have been unethical or deceptive, and they're going to come to you and say, hey, is this true? And blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And so having that, or if you're going on an investigation and you go in and those bells are going off saying, oh no, this is not what these people think it is. And, or maybe this person has an issue, or maybe this is something else. And putting that hat back on is important. Keeps me grounded. I know when if I go into a situation and that skeptic part of me just turns up, I know what that feels like, and I watch. And then it feels like I'm putting people, I don't want to say under a microscope, but I'll say I'm putting under a psychic microscope. And looking through those layers of the thing. And that's an opportunity for us that always, it dumbfounds me a lot of times.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, Alonnie. Definitely, especially when it comes to investigating, whether it's, a big place and it's on tour, or if it's, doing a walkthrough for somebody at their home. And, you have to, being able to peel back those layers is very important. And you're right, and sometimes it can be really tricky to step back and look at it from a skeptic's point of view, but it's important to debunk. People think it's bad if you can't prove that you were right. It's like, no, you kind of want to prove you're wrong, because when you can validate what I'm picking up on in other ways, that's amazing, and that's what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So during investigations, one of the things that I've had a lot of people come to me and talk to me about that they sometimes feel during investigations is that they're the parlor trick. Okay, so if you're the medium, immediately everybody wants a reading right then and there. You almost get like that weird look from people, like they're constantly watching you instead of what's going on during the investigation. Do you sometimes feel that too? There's been, I'd say, a good handful of other psychics in the field that have come to me with that.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it's with the tours that I held out with and the tours that I've been on, especially public tours. Yes, people are looking for the big thrill, the thing that you see on TV. And, they don't realize, or they're not aware of the fact that, it's not always like that. You can walk into, any place, like I said, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, how you can walk in somewhere and the dimmer switches up and you're aware of everything going on around you, or the things you're supposed to be aware of, or it could be way down, or it could be on and they just aren't connecting with you. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just not connecting with you. You're just not meant to pick up on whatever's going on at the moment, but you will. And, people don't realize that it doesn't always work that way. Like my favorite are the people who look at me and say, okay, well, what was my favorite toy when I was 8? I have no idea what was your favorite toy when you were 8. It's kind of like, could I get that? Sure. And sometimes I have, and other times it's like, no, I'm not a performing monkey. That's not how this works, and just because you put me on the spot doesn't mean that, I can just, blurt it out like that and I'm going to know it. And quite frankly, you don't want me to be that in tune with you. Because that means every secret you have is going to go out the window. You don't want to be vulnerable to people like that. That's abuse of our gifts. You don't want us to be that way. There's morals and ethics that go along with this too. And people don't think about that because they just want so much to believe and so much to test and, see if they can really do what they want to do. But it can be a little tricky too, like investigations, because it is something where, it takes a lot less energy for, spirit to communicate with me than it does to make all those cool lights go off on all the equipment we have. So more than not, they're talking to me even during an investigation, and they don't want to use the equipment. So it can be a little frustrating. So I will kind of jump in and help, get the ball rolling, or I'll communicate with them and find out why they're not communicating that way. And if they can, and sometimes that helps, and then we start getting the lights going off and everything. And I'll tell people, unfortunately, it's not as exciting to get the information from me, but yes, at least they're here and I am receiving that. And then sometimes after I kind of take the ball, then the lights go off to validate what I'm saying, and then it catches everyone off guard, which validates it even more, which is kind of neat. But people sometimes walk in and they expect. And when you try to tell them it doesn't always work the same for everybody, or, it doesn't always work the way they want it to, then all of a sudden they're a skeptic and, oh, maybe I can't do what I say I can do. And that's just not the case.
Right.
True enough. Absolutely true enough. We are not trained monkeys. This is not,
yeah,
it's not that kind of deal. I've used this line more than once with people. They'll be, well, what am I thinking? And I'll say, you're an a-hole? Oh, nope, sorry, that's what I was thinking. Because it's like,
I can appreciate that.
I'm not crazy. I'm not going to put an envelope to my head. I'm not a mind reader. This is not entertainment in that respect.
Right.
And so, yeah, people want to see the big shebang, but maybe it's the person next to you that's going to get the hit, not you.
Right.
And I know my own self when something's coming knocking and I'm listening and I don't have the patience, which I need to learn is more patience, when someone else is just babbling, and I'm like, okay, enough. Here's what's going on, And I have to learn this to be a little more patient. And I know that about myself, but I also know that, if it gotta come out, it's gonna come out. Right? Just like when you're with someone and someone else is going, okay, so there's love and there's light around you and there's, this stuff. And I'm like, okay, all right, so here's what's going on. And then, when their jaw drops and they go, yeah, that's my grandmother.
Yeah.
Okay, we're here for a short amount of time doing whatever we're going to be doing. They're only going to visit for a very short amount of time. It takes a lot of energy. So, we can dance around the subject or we can get to work. And it's the same thing with an investigation. This is a great field and it's finally getting its due. But with that comes, oh goodness. Some weird stuff, weird. So, being the person that's there to do a job is a really nice thing to do. Being part of a big team is a nice thing to do. Being there to be someone's blunt of their criticisms or their snideness or their whatever, I got no tolerance for that. I really don't. You know, if you're going to just insult me or insult the people who are doing this tour or doing whatever they're trying to do by just being a smartass, excuse my French, but just being that, I don't got not tolerance for that, and we'll make quick of that.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit awkward too, because especially if you're in the middle of doing an investigation and they ask you like to kind of do a random reading on them, it kind of takes away from what is actually going on. So.
Right. Well, you know, and there's also a level of responsibility and respect and consideration there, especially, and people don't get that because they see investigations as something fun to go do. They're not comprehending what they're actually going to deal with and what's actually out there and what it's capable of, you know, and how much bigger it is, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. They don't take it seriously. It's like when I do private parties, you know, I'll tell people, you know, explain my gifts and what to expect when they work with me, and, you know, especially in group settings, because, you know, some people people will come with a few friends and they'll have, one person who really needed that reading but didn't get it, you know, and the idea of a group setting is that you take away from the experience, not just necessarily a personal message. And, you know, so people say, well, she really needed this and she didn't get it, so could you try to give her something? Because that's why she's here tonight. And it's like, you don't know what happened in her mind, and spirit does. Maybe she heard what was coming out of my mouth, because when you got here, you thought this is all fun and games. But when I started, you know, nailing down details for you, jaws hit the floor and you're like, oh, this is real. And it takes it to another level. And so now it's not just fun and games anymore. And so she might have decided she didn't want that reading. And it's the same for an investigation too. People go in and they're like, oh, this is going to be fun. Ha ha ha. And they, you know, don't think about what they're saying or doing, and, you know, do something silly like invite a spirit to come home with them, or take something from a location thinking it's insignificant. And before you know it, they brought something home from them or to their own home, and they've opened up a world of hurt. So it's just, there's respect and consideration and gratitude at all times when you're dealing with spirit in the spirit world. It's that simple, but it's unfortunately very unknown. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's, you know, talked about enough, I think.
Just because you want Grandma to come through, but Aunt Mabel comes through, Aunt Mabel's got the message. You know, maybe Grandma doesn't have enough energy to talk, so Mabel's going to talk for her, you know? So people have expectations that, you know, they get tunnel visioned, and they forget when we say, okay, that, you know, you're going to get people from a long time ago to current, right? That, you know, when you say, does the name Robert mean anything to you? And they're like, no, Robert. Till the friend next to them says, well, what about your grandfather, Robert? Oh, but I didn't know him. Huh?
Yes.
That's got nothing to do with that, you know?
Yep.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so it's the same thing with investigation. You know, there are layers to all this stuff. And so you may be connecting with a layer from the 1930s, and someone else could be connecting with an energy from the 1970s.
Absolutely.
And neither one of them are wrong. It's just, you know, how it can filter to you.
Right. Yeah, everybody's going to be different. We all have different use of the clairs too. You know, some of us only have one or two, while some of us are wide open with a wide range of the clairs. And with that, I was going to ask you, ladies, what exactly are the clairs?
Oh, I hate technical terminology, I'm not going to lie. I thank you. Good, Alonnie, good. Are we on the same page? I really hate it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a good foundation to have. I can, let me see. I know stuff. I can smell stuff. I can hear stuff. But the thing is, and I'm going to take that back. Have I heard stuff with my ears? Have I seen things with my eyes? Yes. Is it the norm? I have certain norms. Certain ways I see things physically with my eyes. So I guess that could be considered, a clair, but I don't, or one of the clairs, but I don't, like my one daughter can see people walking around, all the time. I don't. What I see is, physically with my eyes is, like a massive energy in one spot in a room. So the whole room looks clear, but in that one particular spot, it may look plasmic or wavy or thick. And so I know that that's where an energy is. And I can also see with my eyes, masses of color and light. So green, purple, white, and then I can also see shadows. The rest is done in my third eye. But have I seen apparitions? Have I seen spirit physically? Yes, I have. It just doesn't happen all the time. And the difference for me this point in my life would be that, just that discernment again that Alonnie talked about earlier. It's discerning my fear with it. Once upon a time I would have been extremely afraid, like something was wrong. Now it may catch me off guard because I'm not used to it, but I wouldn't, have the fear of it that I used to. So, I mean, I just, honestly too, the clairs, if you look in 3 different books, you're going to get very similar definitions with the clairs, but you're also going to get very different definitions with the clairs. So I guess it's really just all mumbo jumbo. Not mumbo jumbo in a bad, disrespectful way, but it's kind of like, again, it gives us that foundation, but really in the end, does it really matter? I mean, that's my opinion on that. I know things, and I can see things, and I can smell things, and I can hear things. I guess I've had a touch of all of it, at least at some point on and off in my life. Feeling things. Empathy is described, I think, as 2 different terms you can use, to describe empathy, and I just say empathy instead of clairsentience or clairvoyance or, clairaudience, whatever the case is. So that's kind of my view on the clairs and making it. I just am who I am. I are who I are, I guess.
I agree with that. I agree with that because, someone may have a bout of clairaudient more and they'll hear something, but that doesn't mean that I don't. It's just maybe that's not up right this second. You have a little bit of everything in there. I mean, if you're tapping into the senses, they're all going to come through. Being a physical medium and being able to hear them and see them and smell them and taste it and the whole thing, to me, it feels like it's just one big package. And sometimes it's a little more enhanced than the other time, and I have a lady I work with who's a nurse, and she'll say she's extremely empathic, but she's not psychic at all. And I'll say, my darling woman, you're a healer. And, so you can touch somebody and you have, through the touch, more than I could ever do with my seeing them. She goes, well, yeah, because that makes sense in my brain. I said, thank you very much. That's what we're talking about. Right? And so when someone says, well, are you clairaudient or this or that? I'll just say, yeah, whatever. All of the above. Check it off. Yes, indeed. Here we go. But it really doesn't matter. Really. I mean, to me, because we are what we are. I agree totally. I am what I am. And because you get people who say, well, did you get your certification? Are you a certified medium? And can you do this and that? I'm like, oh my God, I have not had time for that. Right. And if that's what you want to do, go and have fun and bop yourself on the head, and that's wonderful and it's all good. Go and do the work. Show me. Don't tell me. Show me.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it's true just like for anything else. I mean, you can train, you can go to school, you can do whatever, which I think that is the responsible thing to do, but it's not going to make or break you, because at the end of the day, if you're not going to do the work on yourself and with yourself, and you're not going to practice, you're not going to learn, you're not going to truly do what you need to do from within, it's not going to matter. And just because you can do what you need to on the spot, if someone's going to test you, doesn't mean you're going to continue to be able to do that. And quite honestly, to me, if you're not, it means your ego's out of whack anyway, and so it's not going to end up working out for you, because that's just what happens when you don't keep your ego in check. That I agree with you on that. It's not something that's necessarily important at all. But I think there is a certain responsibility that we should we should work with those who do have experience so we can learn ourselves. And that's what, even some of the people that work with me, they'll come in and sometimes it's more like a vent session, or they end up doing most of the talking. And I sit back and I let them, and I'll help. Yes, no. Like their guides are telling me, yes, this is right. No, this is not. Or just my own experiences. Nope, you're on the right track. No, you should try this. Or yes, but try this instead. It's really, I'm just tweaking and guiding and kind of gently gliding them as they go along. And then they go, oh my gosh, I didn't let you teach me anything today. And I said, I'm simply here to help you with whatever you need. And you just did it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm simply here to do what you need me to do, because that's how it goes. So, that's okay. Yeah, I can teach you about spirit guides, and I can teach you about grounding and protecting, and I can teach you some of the basics, but the stuff that comes from the inside, I really can't. I'm here to help guide you to figure out how it works for you, but only you can really figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's a really true statement.
It is. So, and actually, it kind of goes with my next two questions. So, I think we've already covered, is it something that's innate or is it taught? And it sounds like the census for that is that you're born with it, but it's something that you can learn. Yes?
You can enhance everything, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really more just being able to, it's an understanding. It's helping, you do it because you want to really understand from people who have the experience before you. Yeah, it's not something, because someone said to me one time, well, if you were born with it and you've been doing it your whole life, excuse me, why do you have to go take a class? Well, because there's a lot I don't know, and there's a lot going on that I just need help and confirmation with. Not, so I can continue to do it and, trial and error, but that's not really responsible of me, but it doesn't mean I can't do what I'm already doing. It just means I'm trying to do it better and be better for myself and for everyone else.
Exactly. Like I know nothing. I'm a 101 level for herbology, right? So I'll go to someone who's an expert in that or who's studied that, and I will sit at their feet and absorb some stuff, because to me that's a foreign substance. Well, they'll come and sit and talk with me to know the medium stuff, and that's how we learn. That's how we keep evolving. If we could do all things, right? If we had grand knowledge of all esoteric things, oh my goodness, my would blow up, right? Forget it.
Right.
There are some things that are left to someone who it makes sense to. Go see them. They understand it. Go see them.
Absolutely. Right. But it really comes down to our intentions too, though, if you think about it, because, you can still, as long as your intentions are coming from the right place and they're good, and you're not trying to make things up and you're not trying to impress people, and you really are doing what you think is best or interpreting something the way you really think it's supposed to be, that's okay, even if you make a mistake, because you weren't trying to purposely mislead somebody or give them false information. That's really the difference. It really comes down to our intentions, whether it's, life or with this or even just your job, a different kind of a job. So that's really the most important thing to remember.
The intention is pretty vital to all this stuff. From us doing a service for a person and for them to come to us. It's all pretty intricate. Yeah.
Yes.
So I know that it can all happen very organically. Some people that I know personally have experienced, I would say, influx in their abilities where they didn't know that they had them before, and then something traumatic happened, and now they, it's almost like it, because of it, has kind of unlocked that. Is this something that you guys have experienced too with talking to other people?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that's not the only, way somebody will open up or start their awakening process. Some of us, like me, I've always been this way. But there are lots of others that I know that have, for all different reasons, opened up or awakened. I never had a near-death experience myself, but I was very, very, very ill when I was about 10 years old. And I was assured up and down that even for as ill as I was not going to die. So, it's not like I had a near-death experience or anything, but I can say that after I came home from the hospital and I did start to get better, I did notice that things were heightened for me after that. That's when I did start seeing masses of color and light and things like that. I mean, other people, one day they're just like, wow, I woke up and, the sky looked bluer, the trees looked more green, the colors were vivid, and I didn't care so much about certain things. So sometimes it's just a matter of, it can kind of creep up on you, depending on where you are in life as well. And I think what I've been experiencing, especially in the last couple of years, especially with, I always get myself in trouble with like the older generation, like my parents' generation. They came from a generation, or they are a part of a generation that, religiously and culturally, this kind of thing, was quashed for so long, and they were taught that it was so wrong that people did not allow themselves to know or to explore who they were, on this level spiritually. And, now all of a sudden, because it is, more socially accepted, or people, their mindsets are just different in general about these kinds of things, they're allowing themselves to slowly open up, and they're feeling and sensing and seeing and experiencing more. And then one day, boom, they're like, whoa, I guess this did always happen to me. So there are so many people who have been living their whole lives already without having to go through anything traumatic, really. Life has changed. Our outlook our outlook on everything has changed. And so it's just allowed people more naturally to open up. But then there have been times where, there have been people who have come to me and they have had near-death experiences or, traumatic events, the loss of somebody, especially, and they've opened up, or it's shut them right down too.
Mm-hmm. I agree with what you're saying. There are times in someone's life where they're going to open, and there's times when they're going to shut. And they can come to it at any time in their life after any kind of experience, or just because. Just because. Mm-hmm. And there is no set pattern for this. How can there be? We are an evolving, floating organism. And sometimes we fly a little closer to the sun than other times. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, and other times it doesn't make sense. You can only seek your own value. You can only be where you can be at that moment. And if that moment, it doesn't make sense to you, and then all of a sudden, oopsie doodle, I, had menopause, and oh my gosh, I am seeing people, well, that's how it works. Yeah. There's just no one way for this stuff to happen. I'm always impressed with women. I'm always, women are amazing to begin with, and we tap into this stuff sometimes a little easier than our male counterparts. But when I have a male that will come in and he says, oh my gosh, I'm experiencing these things, the look of wonder on their face is tremendous. And I'm so glad, because they can get out of their own way and open and feel. Yes. And sometimes, male and female, sometimes they can just get out of their own way and experience something, and the lights go on. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with you on that. And as of right now, I have 3 men in my group, 3 men that work with me to learn their gifts. And I think it's amazing. And they come from very different walks of life. They're all different ages. And to set these things aside, to acknowledge, the stigmas, to set those aside and to acknowledge that there's something bigger and greater going on is huge, especially for the men. But I'm finding more and more are coming to parties, and more are coming to see me in my office. And, they're more open to, just even the Reiki healing that I do, and the different, just the different avenues that we have available to us now with, health and wellness and, spiritual health and things like that. So they're definitely coming along.
When did you know that you were gifted?
So that moment came for me about 6 years ago or so now. a friend of mine that I grew up with, who grew up down the street from me, whose house was always haunted, who we always both knew we each were different or special in our own ways. We had lost touch after we got older, and she moved away and then moved back, and we reconnected on Facebook. And her son, she and her son decided they were going to start pursuing their gifts, because her son was extremely gifted as well, and he was, I forget, 16, 17, something like that at the time. And so she put on Facebook, one day that she was taking class and she was looking to practice and to try to hone in on her gifts and to really start using them and figuring things out. And if anybody was interested in free readings and allowing her to practice, to give her a call. So I messaged her and said, hey, sure, what the heck? Come on over and let's see what you can do. And so she and her son came over, and before I knew it, she was reading me and then I was reading her, and I had no idea where that came from. And she started laughing and went, I had a feeling that this was going to happen. I knew I needed to connect with you to do this, because you and I were supposed to do this a long time ago. And I was like, oh crap, what did I just do? So, and then another friend of mine who I knew, a very dear friend of mine, she gets upset when I call her my oldest friend, because she's my longest, dearest friend. So, when I first started doing this and took it on and started to study and mentor with someone myself, I just kept saying to her, I don't know. I don't get it. It's not me. I don't do this. And she looked at me and said, Kristie, you've been reading me my whole life, our whole lives. We've been friends since we were 5. And I looked at her, and then it really kind of took me back. And when I just looked, and I could think back on all the different times that I had conversations with people, and I knew stuff that I couldn't know. And it's because I always had opposition, and I always came up against people who didn't want to hear what I had to say, or would tell me I was wrong because they thought I was out of line or out of place. It gave me that complex that I didn't know what I was doing or didn't know what I was talking about, when really I was right on all along. And it wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about knowing that I was in tune the entire time. And so it was just amazing. Like, I couldn't believe it. And then I started hearing noises in my house, and things started getting weird. And so that was like my breakthrough moment, when I really knew I had to do something with it. The door swung all the way open, and there was no closing it.
Well, I've told this story before on Kay's show. When I was in kindergarten, so we're talking the early 1960s, babysitter would take me to seances because I could see the dead kids, right? I thought everybody could. So to me it was just, right out of the chute, and doing this stuff. I remember being a little person, real little person, and seeing myself hover above myself and having conversations, not just in my bedroom, but in my bathroom, in the car, other places, and kind of talking to myself, I guess. I don't know if that was my inner soul. I don't know what it was, but I remember that. So, that was always, when you say things like that when you're a little person, people don't know what to think about you. And they think you're kind of kooky. Well, I'm okay with being a little kooky because it worked out okay for me. But in 1992, my friend Gail, who was my high priestess, and we were talking one day, and she was getting ready to do a local psychic fair, and she looked at me and she goes, well, I guess it's time. And I said, what? And she goes, here's a deck, go read. Okay. All right, fine. And, I had tarot decks before, but I just fiddle-farted around with them, right? Because, when you're intuitive, you can just sit there and talk to people. You don't need the cards, right? You're kind of a prop anyway, most of the time. And so she just said, here's a deck. The fair's on Saturday. I got you a table. Go read. Okay. And there we go, And so we started that. And so that was a nice confidence booster because, at the time I was married to someone who was not supportive of such things. I was very much in the closet witch for like 14 years of that marriage before I came out. And, all those things that, you go through those ebbs and flows, like talk about, young person, dead, people, okay, well, come on, talk to me, I'll help you out, whatever we're doing all this thing. Then become a teenager. Teenagers are different pod creatures altogether. And being a pod creature that talks to dead people at 13, you're not in with the cliques, I'll tell you that. You're not in with the popular people. And then early times, there was times I wanted to shut things out. I want to know what a normal life is like. It's pretty boring. It was pretty uneventful, And then coming back into the fold, so to speak, felt like coming home again and saying, oh, all right, this is what I'm here on the planet to do. Right, thanks for reminding me. Now let's see what we can do with this. And I'm very, 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 very grateful to her that she said, okay, enough of this business of you just hanging back. And, it's wonderful. I mean, if you have it, do it. If you can, do it. Do it.
That's awesome.
And who cares how old you are? I get parents who I will talk to about, this is what we can look at and how we can work if you got a young person that's doing this. And these are the things we're going to look at, and let's not get crazy. And you got to look at the mundane stuff too. You got to look at the sociology part of it and the psychological part of it. And you got to look at all this stuff with it. It's not just a handbook. Here's the handbook.
Right.
It's not like that. And so we have a responsibility to watch and guide and help and see. And so whatever age it is that it comes upon us, it's because, Wink, you're ready. Here you go. I'll go do it. I had 2 readings tonight before I came home to do this. And one lady was in her 80s, and the other one was in her very late 70s. And she sat down, I looked at her, I said, oh my goodness, do you have that glamour? You can do what I can do. She kind of smiled, she goes, yeah. I said, so this lady behind you, who was from Italy, speaking Italian to me, she said that, you're supposed to be reading the tea leaves. And she goes, yeah, I am. I said, so why don't you do it? She goes, well, I don't know. I said, what's it going to hurt? Go read a tea leaf. Go talk to the dead people. Go, just do it. You can. It's going to keep knocking at your door until you do it. So open the door, crack, see what happens. And she felt better because I honored that part in her and told her, it's okay. Go give it a shot. And that's kind of the nice part about this, because who knows how old someone's going to be or when they're ready to do it or when they're not. It's important that they are. And that's where we take them.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I always enjoy when I'm doing a reading with somebody and I'm like, oh, you can also do this, or you're empathic, and then the surprise look and excitement that they get, because I think, that's the moment that they're finally being recognized for it and maybe even accepting it for themselves too.
Mm-hmm. Big trust. Big trust.
It is. Or the looks of sheer terror.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no, I can't do this. I can't do what you do. I'm like, do what I do. What? Fight with my husband, do laundry, yell at my kids, make sure the homework's done. What can't you do? And they laugh. And it's like,
right.
No, we are normal people who are just in tune with these gifts that we all have. And some of us are just more naturally in tune or born with it or born in tune with it. And others just need to acknowledge it. That's all, yeah, that's, yeah. I can't blame people though for being afraid, especially those who do find themselves on the extreme side of things that, that can be a little tough to deal with, and tough to walk them through sometimes. But, to understand life and death, and especially death and some of the things that they see. But, you brought up a good point too, that, you have to get it out of you. You have to acknowledge it. You're going to feel better. And, I've encountered so many people who have not acknowledged their gifts, and we're not supposed to try to shut them down. But in doing so, they have literally made themselves physically, mentally, emotionally ill. And my own daughter was one of them. She was in high school and all through middle school and high school having all these physical issues. And, my older two remember going through the process with me, because I had just begun the process of really understanding and dealing with, learning myself and coming out of that closet. And, it was cool to see even the way I handled them and everything they went through instinctively, which was everything I was taught later or validated that it was correct later. But, when you're supposed to or you're meant to deal with your gifts and use your gifts, you need to do that. Otherwise, it's going to turn against you because, physically and our bodies can only handle so much. And she ended up having a lot of physical issues and injuries and things. And finally, after all these, specialist appointments and midnight runs to, the ER because of this pain or that pain or this anomaly or this, whatever, I finally looked at her and said, we have two options. We're going to Cleveland Clinic because that's our only other step medically, or you're going to start opening up and you're going to gain control of your gifts. So guess which one you're going to do? Because you're not going to Cleveland Clinic. We're done. Like, I let you deny this long enough. I humored this about, you would do as long as I could. Now we're going to learn it. I don't care if you do anything with it. You don't have to acknowledge it openly, publicly, but you have to because you got to the point where we can all control it to a certain degree, but after a while, if you don't do something with it, it's going to turn on you and control you, and that's exactly what was happening. And so she did. I could not do it for her. She would not have received it from me. She went and saw somebody else that I knew and trusted, and they gave her, a good understanding. And, of course, the daughter that, fights it the hardest is the one going to school right now and is in her third year of psychology. Go figure. She's a healer. It's just in her blood. So, she's still following naturally what her path is. It's just the other stuff that scared her. And because she is the kid that would hear things and that could see things, if we weren't home and she was home alone, she could be upstairs in her room and hear somebody run across our living room floor and jump onto my husband's easy chair and it would rock back and forth. I would be scared to death too because I remember how scared I was and I couldn't. It wasn't at that level for me. It was different. And so I was terrified. So I can only imagine. And so, I don't blame her for trying to block that out. But after a while, it's like, oh, you're beating your head against a brick wall. Like, you've got to understand. And even other people in general, you're at that point. Your knowledge is going to be power. It's not going to make it worse. It's actually going to make it better. But you have to accept this part of yourself. Do nothing else with it. Just learn yourself, So yeah, that's quite interesting.
That's pretty true, and very interesting how you approached it with her. I think that was what really well done.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that because honestly, it was instinct and intuition. To be honest with you, by then I was a little more educated and I was doing this myself. I was open and out there doing it. But when it's a personal, situation. You kind of start questioning and second guessing too because it's personal and it's, it affects you differently too. So it's not as easy to shut yourself off, emotionally and just let things flow too. So it can be a little tricky. So I appreciate that.
It's always interesting that when people, talk to me and I'll say, look, I'm not perfect. I have my foibles with this stuff. I'm afraid of the dark. So there are some things that just scare the bejesus out of me, and that, you don't read for your kids. No, I don't want to know what's going on with my kids,
Yep.
and so for people they have this preconceived notion. And then when they get the reality of it and then they find out what their piece is in the middle, they're far more comfortable knowing that we're not on a pedestal and please don't put me there.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I even, it's so uncomfortable for me. It took me years to even be comfortable, hearing people say my name or address me by name. And I think part of that's a past life issue for me. And part of it just because of how I grew up in the complexes. Cause every time I heard my name, I felt like I was doing something wrong again or it wasn't good enough. And, it's just, it can be very difficult. The simplest things can be so difficult to deal with, in that way and just,
So one of my other questions for you ladies, that's going to be another touchy one is, to be a psychic or a medium or empath, do you have to belong to a certain religion or a belief system?
No, you don't. I am Roman Catholic. And I grew up in a very, very, very large congregation. And growing up, I didn't, just like every kid for the most part, couldn't stand sitting through church, didn't get much out of it. But what I did gravitate towards was the religious ed part of things and, the teen groups and the kid groups and even the retreats and things like that. I volunteered from the time I was 16 until I was in my early 20s when I first had my older two. volunteered teaching. I was even an assistant DRE at my parish for about 3-4 years. That was, when I was doing all of that, I loved who I was. And it really allowed me to open up and learn myself in a different way, and allowed me to be who I was. I really think that if you really sit and take a look and take a step back and look at the different religions and cultures, and just for a few examples, witchcraft and Native American culture, Catholicism, just Christianity in general. A lot of the belief systems go back to nature and just your basics in general. As human beings, doing good for others, doing good for yourself, service to others, positivity, being helpful, being kind, it all goes back to the same ideas and the same foundation. They may do things a little differently, but in this life, in any life we live, we need a foundation of some sort. And, we're not going to learn anything if we do the same things over and over again. But we still need something to start from, somewhere to start from. Right? So, it's with life where you start to learn and you start to grow and you start to change. And then, free will does throw that kink in everything. But I think it, again, comes down to your intentions. It comes down to having faith that there's something bigger than us out there. Do I personally believe in God? Yes, I do. To me, that feels right. Do I believe that there's a higher power? Absolutely. Do I think that everybody has to? No. When I teach somebody how to ground and protect themselves, I teach them to call on, upon the white light and bring it in. But it doesn't have to be the white light of the Holy Spirit. It can just be white light, because white light is pure and it fits everything. As long as you know and believe that there's a higher power, that's what I believe is all that it takes and all that it matters, that there's something bigger out there. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think we are meant to understand it all, because if that was the case, what's the point of all of this? Right? I mean, we all know the answers and we've all got to figure out, so why are we even here? What are we even doing? So I think it really, you don't have to belong to an organized religion. I think it's how you live your life. And I think that it's how it's choices you make and what you do for others and what you do for yourself that matters, at the end of the day.
I can agree with that.
I agree. No, the answer to that is no, I don't believe that's the case. Now, having said that, countless people who have felt religious persecution and left their faith to be able to be more open. Mm-hmm. And other people who said, I find great strength and solace in my faith, and it makes me stronger, right? I have atheist friends who believe none of this stuff, but boy, are they very talented in music, in art, in other things, and I know where that's coming from. It's that part of themselves, that psychic part of themselves, that enhanced part of themselves. And I just smile and I nod, because it really does not matter. If you believe anything, or if you do believe something, it's there. Opinion is in you. And it's gonna come out, and it needs a vehicle. So it doesn't need a name. It just needs an avenue to come out and be enjoyed and harvested, for what you can do. Funny things happen in the name of religion. Funny things happen in the name of faith. Funny things happen that can be so demoralizing and take someone whose practice allows them to walk this kind of a path, being able to do some of the things that we do. And have someone who's on equally the same kind of path, but calls it by a different name, say yours isn't legitimate, but mine is. That's so different. And so when we get caught up in that religion versus faith versus I'm right, you're wrong kind of stuff, we all lose. Because we all come from the source. Whether we believe it or not, there's something. Whether it's the Big Bang Theory and then we came out of the primal ooze, or, there was 2 people in the garden. That those myths and those stories, they aren't really the end-all be-all of what we do or why we do it. If we get caught up in that us versus them, that's just not a good time. And so, as an example of that, a million years ago, doing a psychic fair, and it was a February fair, and it was snowing like, my God, it was snowing. And so this young man and his very pregnant wife with a baby in a little carrier was protesting the fair. In the name of my God, you are all going to hell. Right? And so not knowing that half of the people in there were Christians and pagans and Jewish and Druids and all this plethora of faiths. And we go outside to talk to this guy, and the people who were promoting the fair had to say, you can't come on our porch. This was an American Legion saying, no, can't come up here. You can go on the sidewalk and yell at them, but you cannot get in their faces. So we talk to them, and I look at this very pregnant lady, and she's got a black eye. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at it being a blizzard, and she's very pregnant, and got a little tiny one that probably was only, born and she got pregnant again, in this carrier, and the snow is falling on this kid. And I'm looking at him thinking, in the name of your God, we're doing something wrong when you are beating your wife and leaving your child in a blizzard. So, go away. When we get to that place when we do that, mine's better than yours, and not hold up what we spouse is our thing, right? Like he was not doing. You can't say, I have an all-loving God. Let me beat my wife and put my kid in a blizzard, but you're going to hell because you're helping someone else talk to their grandmother. It doesn't make sense in my mind.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
Very slippery. As a priestess, I have done more interfaith marriages and funerals than I've done of my own faith. And I like that because you can give spiritual guidance for somebody, and it doesn't matter. And if you don't sit up and cross yourself the right way, or get on your knees the right way, or do whatever the right way, doesn't make you wrong. It just means there's another path to the center, and let's play nice.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox. Sorry.
I agree. I've had people, I've been very lucky and very blessed. Not a lot of people have really challenged me on this or attacked me with this coming from this angle, but there have been a few, and, when they pull the religion card on me, not knowing my past and background and history, I came to this conclusion a long time ago, and I still stand by it today. God made me, and God doesn't make mistakes.
There you go.
Yep.
It's that simple. You don't have to believe in God. You can substitute it for my higher power made me, whatever the case is. But in my eyes, my God with the Bible, He made me, and He does not make mistakes. So go back and read it again.
That's exactly I was always raised, you don't judge somebody by their center. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to me what your center is, and I shouldn't judge you because I don't have to live your life, and I can't live it for you. So if that's what feels like home to you, then that's what's right, and I'll do the same for me. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that don't have the same way of thinking, and they are just quick to judge, but then are lenient on themselves when it comes to believing. So it's a strange situation that it kind of gets into a little bit.
Absolutely.
So lastly, what would you say to somebody who is just beginning to use and understand their gifts?
Wow, that's a big question. There's so much. I think I would have to say one of the most important things that I would say to them is to make sure that they are true to themselves first, true to their gifts, and also make sure they are mindful of protecting themselves. Even in the purest form, with which we work with, in the light, not in light, there's still so much out there that is going to go after the good. And you have to be very aware of that. You have to have a great respect for that. You have to try to understand it the best that you can, because you can't have good without bad. And so that's always been a big thing of mine, is to make sure that you understand, you have to protect, you have to know your limits, you have to really appreciate what you're dealing with to the best of your ability. But if you're going to do it, you have to be all in. No matter what that means for you, you have to be all in, however that's going to be for you.
Wise words. Very nice. Very nice. I don't even know where to start with that.
We can go on forever about that. That's
when I have someone coming in their stuff, and I'll say, okay, so what's your purpose for doing this? Do you have an intention where you want to go? Is there a direction? What are your ordinances? Do you know this is still a misdemeanor in New York State? Do you need to say this is for entertainment only? Do you know your ethics? What are your ethics? What are you talking about? What's going on? What's your preconceived notion and what's the reality? So I try and do a little bit of the whole thing, look around that kind of thing. But encouragement is a big part. Just go and just read. And be prepared to get knocked down a whole bunch of times. Mm-hmm. So that you can learn from it and get back up and keep going. Honor that part of yourself that's taking a risk and allowing yourself give yourself a hug, pat on the back, It's a good thing what you're doing for yourself or for whoever is going to be fortunate enough to be with you. Learn that you're infallible, and that there's going to be days you're just going to shake your head and say, "Why me? Why do I get to see that in the corner? Why can't someone else?" Right? Well, I have people say, well, I only want to see the good stuff. Well, that's not life. Right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
What do you know? How, you're going to see someone that is approaching the end of their life. How are you going to talk to them? Mm-hmm. So I encourage and I try and give a nice talk about the birds and the bees of being a psychic medium. There's a lot of this. There's a lot to it.
I love that. The birds and the bees of being a psychic medium. That is so true. It really is. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I think I would tell them to don't be discouraged by what, if they're in school, what other students or teachers would say, or, what their opinions would be. Don't be discouraged by it. Reach out, talk to somebody. There's going to be somebody. It might seem like a really silly thing, but what I've learned the most from Spirit is even if it's silly, you got to say it. Mm-hmm. So you might as well start by talking to somebody about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it, and I love talking to the both of you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I had a really nice time.
It was good to talk with you, everyone. It was just a good night. Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining my circle tonight. It was a pleasure to discuss this spooky topic with you, and a thank you to all my listeners for tuning in. And as always, dreadful dreams. Remember, my darlings, to always be kind to those around you, including our friends with claws, fangs, and fur. Hello, darling. Love the show and want to be more involved? All while showing your support? Have I got the perfect thing for you? Subscribe to my Patreon page today, and as a patron, you'll have the option to select which tier you are interested in, with exclusive patron-only offers from early access, live stream chats, shoutouts, distant readings, and so much more. If this has piqued your interest, please follow the link in the chat or go to patreon.com and search Cauldron Talk with Kristie Colburn and become a patron today. Thank you for your support, darlings, and as always, dreadful dreams.